starts now.
All right, so back to the play Doubt. Did you guys want to touch on the points that we did last time? Did you guys want to just go into it? Do you want to go down the list of how to read a
We can
play?
do maybe like a summary and then maybe expand on things and stuff, I guess.
Okay.
And we can maybe touch some of the points that we didn't touch. So I think Estrella was kind of reading off some of this from some of the key points that we were discussing
last time. Yeah. Okay. Estrella, if you want to get us to the first point that we talked about.
Okay, so the first point that we discussed was doubt, like itself as the theme, and then how it connected to the different characters.
Okay. So I think we all agreed that Sister Aloysius was the doubtful one. She was the main character that was in doubt in the entire play.
Definitely, yeah. And I think she was the one that like also like out of all the characters that like hid her doubt, I think she kind of like masked it sort of until the very end.
Yeah.
She was so like sure of herself throughout the whole play, and then it wasn't until the end that she's like,
yeah, since she was like the headmaster of her place, she kind of had to put a face on, and so
right.
she can't show like kind of emotions. All she has to show is like she has power and like control over her students, her like the other sisters.
She kind of sees like doubt or anything like that like sort of like a weakness.
Yeah, it was really different compared to Sister James and like her doubt, because Sister James, since she's new, I feel like, you know, she's a new teacher and new to this environment. She had a lot more room to really voice out her doubt. Like we see her doubt throughout the whole story compared to Sister Aloysius.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it almost has like Sister James was kind of like teeter-totting, like she wasn't really sure, but then she kind of like, well, is she onto something? Could she be right? But then she was more like, following her own intuition, which I think showed that she was more like on the priestess side. Well, at least I felt that she was more on the priestess side. Like she wanted to believe that nothing was going on and the priest was innocent.
Yeah, she was a really strong contrast to like Sister Aloysius, I think through her like being like such opposite characters, I think they both kind of like highlight each other's like characteristics. I think it brings it out a lot more. You just kind of see. But I also noticed that like Sister Aloysius, like there's a part where she's like pouring tea for the father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's nervous at first, and they say that she's shaking the like teapot, like. And I noticed that like at first she was kind of nervous around the father, and then she got a little bit more stern with him, because I think they kind of talk about like the hierarchy of like males in the priesthood and like the female nuns kind of being below them. I think they talk about it when they're talking about if she goes to like his superior, that maybe they're gonna favor him because of the male hierarchy and stuff like that.
Yeah, not touching that on the. Oh, go ahead.
Another thing I found interesting, I don't think we really discussed this part, but with Father Flynn, that in the beginning, we saw that he does a lot of his sermons based on kind of what's going on in his life. He writes them down in his little notebook, and then he like does a whole thing about it. And then his very first speech, like the opening scene, basically, was about how he's doubtful, or like what he's doubtful about at that moment. He's talking about how, like, how basically how he's unsure, or like unsure what to do, and how he feels lost. And I think that it's very telling, like on the story, like kind of like the audience is kind of led to believe like, oh, he's in doubt because he knows he's doing something wrong, or he has this feeling, and this is kind of how he's releasing that instead of really directly telling anyone.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll go for it, Jero. Yeah.
Okay. I think it was on like part, I think 4, when when Sister Aloysius was first accusing the father. At first, when he came in, he was like calm, kinda. He was all nice. He like, his tone was like low a little bit to show that he's calm the whole time. But then when the Sister Aloysius started accusing him, like, like getting to the point of her and Sister James, he started like kind of freaking out a little bit. Like he kind of jumped.
Right.
That's like his kind of theme this whole play. Like he's calm, and then bring up what like his accusation, and then he just kind of blows up. He's kind of like, because that kind of shows like, oh yeah, there's something like it adds to his suspicions.
Yeah, I think you mentioned before too about him like snapping at that bird. He was like, he got kind of crazy with the bird a little bit. But
that definitely goes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I interrupted.
No, yeah, I was done. I'm done.
I was gonna say that part kind of goes with how we were talking about the character journey, and how we kind of discussed how in the beginning he seems like this very laid back, wants to play Christmas music, uses ballpoint pens, very open, until the end where all of a sudden he's like stickler for rules, like he wants to do everything by the book, like he's snapping at people, like definitely very suspicious behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's kind of almost, I feel like they kind of put that out there, that possibility that maybe like he starts out like in doubt of, like, almost like saying he's in doubt of his like position as the father, but like once he gets away with something, he's almost like embracing it now. Like I feel like, I don't know if they're trying to show that on purpose, like almost like he got away with something, possibly got away with something, or possibly didn't even do anything. But yeah, there's all that kind of like very ambiguous sort of sort of things going on.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. So we touched on a little bit of the theme. Character journey. I think each character definitely had their own journey. And Sister Aloysius, I think hers was pretty straightforward. She was really just set on trying to get something out of the priest, right? Like she had the suspicion, and she was set on, finding out what it was. Sister James's journey, I believe, was like mixed. Like I said, she was unsure, almost like she didn't want to believe it, but then she was like, maybe Sister Aloysius is right or onto something. And then the father, pretty much his journey was
Yeah, kind of went from like a calm priest to like, kind of a weirdo.
Yeah, kind of raised some eyebrows towards the end, like, because you're unsure, right? Like, well, was he guilty? Was he not guilty?
Yeah, and I think around the of Sister Aloysius' character, like development type stuff, on part 8 when she was talking with Donald's mom, I think that was like she kind of put. I can tell she put on a face how even when Miss Muller was saying like some outrageous things like, oh yeah, just leave it be, even if Donald is being like kind of molested by the father, that should be fine, like as long as he's in the school. And I can really see that Sister Aloysius was like kind of breaking character, where she from like a calm face to like I would say angry-ish, or like a little bit annoyed that the even Donald's mom isn't like on her side. So I think that added more to her obsession to like stop the father before he like does more stuff to like get him out of the church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was definitely very strange. The conversation with Mrs. Mueller, I think her name was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really weird. There was a lot of like it was almost like she was saying that like, well, at least like he's just being molested with the father Flynn when he's getting beaten up by his father at home. It's almost like she's just looking at all abuse like sort of as like that's just the way it is. He's kind of
Almost like
says that
weighing
he's
out. Like she's weighing out
sort of
which one of the two is worse. Like, you know what I
right,
mean?
right.
Like,
And she even says something like, I think that like Donald is like he's sort of effeminate. He's just that way, which is almost like saying like, yeah, he kind of deserves to be like violated by the priest because that's just the way he's gonna grow up to be gay anyways or something. She
Odd
almost
that
kind of
at
says
one
that in a
point,
way.
yeah, did you like at that one point where she was kind of like, oh well, how do we like? It's not the exact words, but it was the implication of it was kind of like, oh well, how do we know that Donald didn't like initiate it, or how do we know that he wasn't like looking for it or something
Right.
like that? And I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
I don't know what they call it, but it's something like the victim. It's like a victim reversal sort of thing,
Like victim blaming.
Yeah, the victim becomes the perpetrator of like becomes the wrongdoer in the situation.
Yeah, I think probably like at this point where that was where like her kind of mental like status of the situation just kind of went like obsessive to the point where at the end, as we said before, at the end she finally starts to break down after all like this maybe like all the stress, trying
Right.
to prove that the father is bad. She got what she wanted, but not really, because the father is still like probably gonna do the same thing again, but at a different church.
Right.
like he's
Yeah,
still
she kind of
involved.
actually kind of ruined it like in a way, like even finding out like some like true justice, but even in that it's like it's really kind of like the only people that really know the truth are the kid and the priest. When it boils down to everything, those are probably the only people that know the absolute truth, and it's almost seems like it's like those two people are the last people that would even say anything out of probably different kinds of fear. Like Donald's probably fearful of being beaten up by his father, and the priest is fearful of like being exposed as a child predator.
Yeah.
Thing about
But
the
like,
character journey. Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll go for it.
the journey that we also discussed was kind of how it all ended in like a very open note. There was like no really like oh, this is the end of the story. Like he was innocent, he was guilty. It was kind of just all left in the open. Like you could think of anything and it's a possibility. Like, oh, he got sent to this new school. Will it continue? Will it not? Like we don't know. Or we don't see how Sister Aloysius kind of deals with like her like breakdown. Like we don't know how that's gonna go going forward, if it changes kind of her perspective on how she's teaching, or what kind of effect that had on like Sister James.
I think there needs to be a sequel.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there
the
was
revenge
room.
of
There's
Sister
room. Yeah,
Aloysius.
Yeah.
there's room there for a sequel for sure. But maybe the playwright was he did it in that way so that you can come up with your own conclusion, right?
Right.
And not
Definitely.
everyone's going to agree on the same thing, right? Everyone's going to come up with their own conclusion.
Or even just realize that like these sort of things like coming from like an outside observer is like you're gonna be left in doubt. Like you're not gonna ever really know the truth, I think, because like like you only know the truth about yourself pretty much. So I think like in any story, I just think you're kind of left to I don't know, you're kind of left in doubt in any kind of story, I think.
All right, so let's see.
So, did we go over like dramatic action?
Last time I'm not 100% sure, but I mean we have the floor now. We can discuss everything that we didn't touch on, or
Okay.
go back to what we
Cool.
did touch on. So as far as dramatic action, some of the questions that are being asked is that what is the overall action of the play?
Mm-hmm.
The overall action of the play.
Really like big kind of action that happens or that sets everything up, just because the first time, like, I guess the real action would kind of just be Sister James telling her like, oh, I am suspicious of this, or I did notice this. That's what kind of set everything off. But I guess it would really be that moment that she saw Donald and the father like kind of go with themselves, but that happened outside of the play or what we're shown.
Yeah, definitely. All the discussions in the offices, I think, was like where the action really took place was all the dialogue in the offices. And then I guess the action starts to rise when she talks to Mrs. Mueller, and definitely when she talks to the priest. I think they talk on multiple occasions. No, they talk like twice. There's two different scenes where they discuss.
Yeah.
There's one scene that's like planned, and then there's one that she just sees him in the hallway or something like that, and they start. I think they start fighting about. I think that's when
that's right.
It's kind of really like heated up the dialogue. Yeah, I think so too. I think that like most of the dramatic action has to do with like dialogue, for the most part. Did you get a chance to watch the play? Anybody like on the live?
I did not personally. I have
Yeah,
not
me
had
neither.
time.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine there's not a lot of stage movement going on.
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of yelling.
There's a lot of yelling. Yeah, it pretty much takes place like one or two like set pieces. I think there might be like I would imagine there'd be like a classroom, and then like of course the office, and then maybe the basketball court.
Thing.
The garden,
the garden scene, the basketball court scene, for sure the offices. Yeah, maybe a class. All right. Let's see. First impressions.
So
impressions really just
first impression.
I was reading throughout the whole play. Like For the priest, you kind of just get this idea that he's very like when we first get into the system, well, you think he's like very wise, he's very like open with his students and stuff. And then at the end, you're kind of like, oh, like I don't know, like maybe he's a little too close with the students, or maybe he's not. We're not really sure. And then when Sister Aloysius, your first impression is like, oh, she's this cold teacher, like she's detached, she doesn't care for her students in like such an intense way. She tends to keep her distance. But then towards the end, we kind of see like where she's like, oh, you need to be able to detach yourself so you can see these small things, so you can take better care of your students or the people around you. And then with Sister James, the first impression was kind of like, oh, she's a nice teacher. She obviously cares for her students, you know, like she just wants to take care of them, make sure they're good. But then at the end, we also see this kind of change where it's like, if it comes down to protecting her students or herself, she will choose herself, like mentally. So I feel like it's kind of interesting how everything just kind of switches or flip flops.
Yeah. Almost like she had like an unstable kind of like mindset. Sister James.
Right.
Yeah, I did notice that switch though. Now that you mention it, she was like, Sister James was just like the innocent kind of new sister, but then at the end, she just kind of all like her doubts kind of ish, or like her usual like attitude just kind of like went away after she talked with the father. So I don't know. They didn't really keep her character that much.
Definitely have to do with, we talked about it last time, how Sister James is in like her early 20s, I think it said. And her like she's just getting over like the whole childhood aspect of her life. And there was that line in particular that stood out that was like, oh, we're not allowed to like stay like, this is kind of the gist of it, because I'm not sure the exact wording right now, where Sister Lacius was kind of like, oh, we can't keep our peace of mind because that's for the children. And so I think that's definitely a very important factor with Sister James, that she's just getting over having that childish peace of mind.
Okay.
Yeah, like she wasn't
right. She kind of lacked.
Because remember, Miss Sister Aloysius talked about experience, and that's how she came to her suspicion about Father Flynn. And Sister James was, you know, a new nun, and she hadn't really experienced life per se, you know.
Yeah, I definitely saw like a very there was a lack of like experience and like naivety from Sister James. Even when like Sister Aloysius is like telling her these things, you almost get the impression that she's just eating everything up for the most part. Like she does kind of question some things, but like as soon as like her superior kind of like sets her in her place, she's kind of more impressionable, I guess you can say, like toward like her advice, and maybe even so with like Father Flynn, where like she's just willing to believe what like the fairy tale or whatever is sort of like viewed as the positive like way of perceiving things and stuff. I think maybe she questions Sister Aloysius is because some of the things she says she doesn't want to believe. But I think at the same time, it's very like impressionable. And so Sister Aloysius perhaps is maybe taking advantage of that a little bit to like sort of take it into her hands to sort of hold shape this new this into her own sort of thinking, I guess.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. It's kind of easier to manipulate someone who is, you know, like new.
Right.
Yeah. Even at the end, Sister Aloysius did manipulate the whole thing by lying. Like she's mentioned that she lied about something about a history of the father doing something in another church. I think like she like had to as a sister to like commit. I guess I think it's a sin, right?
Yeah, well, she lied. Yeah, so
Yeah,
technically, in the eyes of religion, lying is a sin.
yeah. So she had
So
to
she
like manipulate the
committed
situation.
sin. Yeah, to kind of get some kind of direction with the father.
Yeah,
What's kind of interesting about that is like you don't really, you kind of wonder how that like whole breakdown affected Sister James, and how like going on from like this point on, she's gonna be like not very. I would think maybe not very trustworthy of like her superiors, and maybe not as naive, and like maybe question things a little bit more, and maybe like um, I don't know, maybe be a little more firm and like standing up for herself. I think it's like doesn't show her growing point, but it kind of implies that like she's gonna realize that everything that Sister Lucia said was like not only done like as like deception, but also sort of like going against their belief in like religion and God and stuff like that.
What kind of props do you guys think would be used in the play?
props.
I think we mentioned the, the ballpoint pen and the coffee mug.
Yeah, and like the teacup.
So the
Um,
office scene, right? So like an office kind of,
there's
a
probably like,
desk.
I imagine in my head like a desk, yeah, like a desk with like a picture of like Jesus or Mary in the background, maybe
Right,
with like a
right.
cross, of course, like crosses and like, um, but very probably very pro- with like Sister Losius's demeanor, probably not very decorated, probably very simple, some crosses and some like religious pictures maybe.
Yeah, I kind of imagine like her office looked like Harry Potter type of thing. It's like kind of dark, like
Yeah, yeah,
brownish. There's like a fireplace in the back,
I,
something like that.
I can see that, yeah.
Why I imagine it to be very like small. I don't know if it's because all the arguments are very intense, so I imagine it being very like kind of in your face in a way. But I imagine it being like smaller than I would think would normally be for a principal.
Yeah, that makes
Actually, yeah,
sense because like the what's it called? Then don't they only have like very few students? So I imagine the place that wouldn't be that big.
and usually I don't know if it's like designed this way, but like principal offices are kind of built a little bit more intimately to be kind of focused on engaging with the student, and rather than being like a big extravagant office or anything like that.
Yeah,
Um, and I think also too the way the play's set up, it feels like with she sees the door cracked open and stuff, and I feel like it's not very like spread out. It's everything's pretty close. Like you can turn your head and maybe a couple steps and you're at the door to close the door. At least on the set, it might be like more practical just because of the space. But I think even in like the like story itself, I think it's probably meant to be. You're right, like a lot smaller and a lot more intimate and a lot more in your face and like focused dialogue, which helps kind of like um, narrow into that sort of the focus of the play to be on the dialogue and stuff.
yeah. But we also still have a few scenes where they didn't take place in an office. Would be the basketball scene, basketball court,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
and in the garden. So those would need, separate props.
I wonder if on stage, because there's a point when, and it might just be implied in the play, but like they look out the window, don't they see that old lady walking down in the garden area?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if like it's like there's a background and the foreground's the office, and maybe the background is like there's like a window maybe, and then like the background is like the garden area. I don't know. Maybe they to maybe bring it more forward to the audience. Maybe they like bring that set forward at one point. I'm not really sure how everything's designed for that, but it might just be implied. They might just have a window and they might say the line and kind
Yeah.
of paint the picture in your head.
Right. Um, whose story is it? Whose story do we think this is?
I think it could be just about anybody's story. I remember thinking like because it would equally, it's all about these adults having doubt, um, and taking all them away. You would be kind of left with just Ronald or Donald, the boy maybe
Yeah.
because it's the
Spaced
conflict is
around
kind of
him.
evolving
Yeah.
around.
Right. For sure. Yeah, I think Donald Mueller's story for sure, because everything is focused around him.
Right. But what's interesting about it is like you could almost like watch or read the play with a particular character, like focus on a particular character, and it could almost be like 3 or 4 separate stories like in one, sort of, because you're kind of like it's all parallel to each other, but they're kind of all going on some sort of like transformation, I think,
Mhm.
all at the same time.
Crow. How ironic. I think actually with the crow scene, that would be like a scenic metaphor, maybe.
Right.
Uh,
I think so. Yeah, scenic, definitely. Yeah.
just because we all know what crows kind of like signify,
Mhm.
and it just so happened to be in the scene where Father Flynn was talking to Sister James, and they just
Right.
decided to throw a crow in there.
It's almost like, what do you call it? It's like comic relief too,
Right.
in a strange way. And you
Yeah.
kind of think of like what's those like those comic books in the Mad magazine, Spy versus Spy, and
Oh,
they're
I
two
remember that.
crows. Yeah, and I feel like um, they're kind of like satirists. They like satire things, like and like kind of like a gesture does to the king. It's like the jester's the only person that can make fun of the king. I feel like the crow like kind of like sees everything that's going on and sort of like um, I don't know, sort of makes fun of it in a way, to where
Yeah.
like the priest kind of knows like these crows are gonna like blow his cover or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did heard somewhere like I think it was in a movie. I forgot something about like crows symbolize like kind of like a sin or evil, kind of.
Like an omen or
Yeah, it's
something.
like a bad
Yeah,
omen.
yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot
You
which
you
movie
might
it
have
was.
seen that in the movie The Crow. Do you remember that movie? It's based on a comic book.
The Crow. No, I
It
didn't see
I've
was
it.
heard
with
of it. I've never seen it.
the movie was with Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, and he got killed. He got killed on the movie set. People think it's a conspiracy because Bruce Lee was killed too. But yeah, Brandon Lee was killed on the movie set for the first Crow. But they made a bunch of other sequels and stuff. But it's worth checking out, though. It's a good movie. It's from like the early to mid '90s or something. But anyways, not to diverge on.
But also, I don't know if you guys have heard though, but also too, they certain cultures believe that crows and ravens are
Right.
they're like wise, and
Mystical,
they see
yeah.
everything. Yeah, like they see everything, and they almost like they
Mhm.
guide you, in your life journey. I think I've heard
Right.
this maybe in like Native Americans believe, that they're not so much of an omen type thing. They're more like, guidance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Or your
they might be
ancestors
like,
talking to you.
Mm.
right. I think they could also be something that like an like a omen bringer that can bring either good or bad like omens to people.
Huh.
But I've also heard crows, metaphor for crows as being that they're nature's teenagers, like they're always hanging out at places, like sort of sort of getting into trouble, figuring out how to like eat junk food and stuff like that. But they're really intelligent animals. I mean, they're so. I always feel like animals like that can survive right alongside like mankind or humankind is like it was like so amazing that like they figured out how to like coexist and like kind of live off our world, in a way.
Mhm.
All right. Estrella, is there other stuff on your notes that we didn't necessarily touch on?
Everything we discussed the first time.
All right, let's see. Let me look for something else that maybe we didn't talk about last time.
The only thing to talk about this time that we talked about last time was like the nails. We spent like a good amount of time on those.
Oh yeah.
We started something at the end of it. Yeah, the weird detail of the nails, which was
Like what
I
did
was
that
kind of thinking of
symbolize?
this. I almost feel like in a way it's kind of a weird perspective because like if you were just I don't know, like if it wasn't pointed out by like the sister, you might, depending on who you are and what how you like perceive things and stuff, you it might not be something that everybody notices. But I think that's like plays into the like whole doubtful thing is sort of like somebody else can sort of plant something in your head, like the sister's like, and his nails are long. I don't understand it. And then you think like, yeah, that is kind of weird. Like you might have not thought it before, but now you're like, wait, that is kind of strange now that she says it, like
Yeah.
In the beginning, when he first mentions it, he mentioned it while they were playing basketball, and it was just kind of like this. Oh, guys, like take care of your nails, guys. Like if I can do it, you can do it, and you don't really think anything of it until Sister Aloysius is kind of like, like weird, and then that's when you're like, oh, maybe that is weird. Why are his
right.
nails long?
Yeah. Yeah, because he mentions about hygiene of your nails and keeping your nails clean, and then down the line I think sister even tells him like cut your nails. Isn't there
Yeah.
like there's a line in there where he tells her, oh, cut your nails?
Yeah. That was the end of part 8.
Yeah, so it's like
Yeah, I wonder like we think we were talking about like we were wondering if like in the play like when he's like even when he's saying that to the boys about like keeping their nails clean, I wonder if like we were wondering if like his nails were like exaggeratedly long, like where you can see it in the audience, if you were in the play, like he'd be like, keep your nails clean, boys. They're like these long nails.
Yeah.
right,
You're like, wait, what do you mean?
like how do you play basketball with long nails first off?
right, yeah.
And keep them clean.
And I think that's a thing about it too. I think I don't know if the playwright intended that, but like that's kind of like a clever way to get you to question it is like, because like most of us were thinking like, how does he play basketball? And it's like kind of like puts doubt into your head, you know? You're like, wait a minute, nails like that actually is really weird. Even if you think it was weird, you're like, oh, that's not a big deal. But then you're like, basketball, like that doesn't make sense.
It makes you wonder exactly the length, like we said, like what was the length of these nails? Because
Right.
Yeah, to the point where they have to mention it like three
Do you think
times.
do you guys think it's like significant of anything like regarding like being like a predator of children maybe or something like the claws of the predator sort of like a metaphor for that maybe? I don't know.
I mean, it could be. I feel like it could signify like his feminine side. You know,
Right.
we are programmed to think that men aren't supposed to have long nails. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the ones that do decide to have long nails, like maybe, there's some kind of femininity to that.
Makes sense.
Right.
Ties into like the whole like, oh, he's this laid back person, he's not as like on it with them, I guess. Maybe I think it just mostly ties into that too.
All right, let's see. We talked about props. We talked about whose stories it is.
What about theory? Did we cover theory, the playwright's theory? Kind of, sort of.
I think we talked on the theme, not necessarily the theory, because it seldom fits any theory. So it's basically says it's a tricky category because plays seldom fit nearly or neatly into any theory, even the playwright's own theory. So
Right.
let's see, hold on.
Well, I think in a way, like it's like I guess to pose like a theory question would be like maybe like I think it ties into the theme where it's like basically just saying that people are gonna doubt like the people are just doubtful in general. I think is what it's kind of saying, and it's kind of just like theory of like at the end of this play is the audience going to be left and like in doubt about what just occurred, and I don't know. Do you have anything else on that?
I don't know. I guess I pretty much just leave you to build your own theory because there was
Right.
no set outcome.
Yeah, I wasn't like the playwright was like, I bet you guys are going to be doubtful on this play. But I think in a way, it's kind of like you, like sometimes like something like this might be written in that regard, where it's they're thinking about like they're posing a question in their head, like I wonder, like you want to experiment with like the idea of doubt in the play and see how it affects the audience too. You know, how the audience perceives the characters, and I guess you kind of want to just try to find a unified reaction in each individual way, I guess. And I think we talked about like what happens next, right? I have some notes for that I think we got from, like, I think there's always this element of it being like a cliffhanger. Every part of the play was kind of split up into that like cliffhanger, like sort of idea.
Yeah. It's like you were left, like you want to know what happens next. For sure, when I was reading it, like I was creating my own conclusions, and you're just like, okay, what's gonna happen next? Like I want to know if I'm right or if it's gonna take me somewhere else, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, it was kind of shocking. I think we talked about the impressions, but like it was shocking to find out that it was a play about that subject matter. Like once that bomb dropped, it was just like, oh wow, I didn't realize this was gonna be about like a child predator or something along those lines.
I read like a quick little description on it prior to me reading it, and
Okay.
it said it was like, oh, it's a play about child abuse. So immediately I was like,
Okay.
oh, it's about child abuse. I didn't even think it would go to the next level of some type of child abuse. You know what I'm saying? And it did touch on child abuse, but it definitely elevated to the next level, like of, you know, child abuse.
Yeah.
There was some historical content there, with Sister Aloysius speaking briefly on being married and her husband being in was it World War II?
Yeah, I was World War II.
Yeah.
World War II. So there was some historical context there.
I think it was kind of a way of also establishing that she comes from a different like era of like thinking and stuff. I think compared to the sister and the father who are a lot younger. I think I'd imagine too. Even I think Miss Mueller is pretty young too. So I think compared, um, that might be like sort of like a sub theme, I guess, or something like, you know, how the, the ways of the past were a little more, the way of thinking was different, you know.
Yeah, there was actually in the play, like right before it, it actually shows ages. I'm trying to look for it.
It does, yeah.
And I think the more specific one was Mrs. Mueller. Everybody else was like in their like 20s,
If she had
or
like a
60s,
specific
whatever.
age.
Yeah, she was like 38.
Aloysius, it says between her 50s and 60s.
Sister Aloysius. Oh yeah, okay, yes, I see it. And Father Flynn, late 30s, Sister James in her 20s, and Miss Mueller was around 38. It was like super specific.
Which is really that's really interesting that they do it with that like range of age. I think, like even though it's kind of like around the same age area, but I just think it's interesting. Probably more for like auditions, casting, stuff like that, so you can have more variety of choice. I think, and people to play those parts.
Let's see.
Like kind of the message of the play was interesting, considering how a lot of times you kind of hear about this type of thing, kind of like, oh, or like not hear about it, but I feel like I'm constantly, it's not really a full conversation, but I'm constantly hearing like little comments about it every now and then when people talk about church. They're like, oh, but priests, like with children, like there's kind of always that little like implication. I don't know if people really notice that they do that, where it's just kind of like priests are kind of known to have this like inappropriate behavior just because they
Right.
have the power to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're like pre-positioned to like have this like view of priests and stuff, and like my personal like life experience. I grew up in foster care, and luckily, since I was like a really young kid, I was always really hyper aware or suspicious of people being perverts. And like we had a lot of volunteers come to the foster care place, and like I don't know if I didn't rat anybody out, but I would like definitely express my opinion on people. Like if I had a weird, if I felt something weird about like an adult or something, or their
Mm-hmm.
behavior or something, I was just kind of like hyper aware of it, and sort of like also aware of like kids who were like really naive sort of to those kind of things. Like I kind of saw that like right away. I don't know, it's just an instinctual thing, I guess. But I think coming into like a play like that, it's like really easy to be sort of suspicious of that sort of thing, because you hear things about that, and sometimes like just like any other rumor, those things sometimes, you know, it's definitely a problem, but it's something that I think also gets blown up as well.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting too, because this play takes place in the 60s, right? And we don't really know if this was an ongoing thing back then. We really know that stuff like this was starting to come out within the last few decades. You know, it was more
Right.
common that it was coming out, you know, like we had a lot more incidents in regards to that sort of
Was
thing. But in the 60s, like, you know, was this well hidden? Like, was it more well hidden, or I'm sorry, I didn't. Someone said
well,
something. I'm hearing.
that's all right. Yeah. I might be breaking up too. But, I was gonna say, was it written in the '60s or was it written? I know it's definitely about the '60s, but do you know when it was written? The play?
That I don't know. That would be something interesting to look into as far as when exactly it was written, and you know, but in the play it takes place in the 60s.
Okay.
Yeah. Whether it was written in the
Well,
60s, I don't know.
yeah, it's definitely something that was going on in that time, but I think it was really hidden. And I think like whenever I've seen like movies or anything that's like about that subject matter, like even seeing people like in certain eras of time like doing like drugs and stuff is kind of like shocking, because like there's certain eras that you think of like not associating those things with so much. Um, but like I was thinking of a movie. It's a Clint Eastwood movie called Mystic River, with Sean Penn's in it, and it's about that subject matter, where this guy, he goes around and like it's like murdering all the pedophiles in the town, and you find out that he was like part of some kind of abuse when he was a child too. I think it's based on a true story, but that's why I was just wondering what the date was, because like I think in like the late '90s, like movies like started to come out like that, more and more subject matter about like pre-scandals, like um, coming out of the woodworks that are like '50s, like super old stuff, you know, like.
Yeah,
And
since this was set specifically, this story was set in 1964, and I think that, yeah, I think it's
Okay.
like around the time where like maybe like a decade later, that's when like all the news of all these priests, yeah, started coming out.
or it could potentially been happening a lot more. It just wasn't surfacing like it did in the last few decades, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Maybe it was going on a
Right.
lot more because it was well hidden, and times change. So as times change, maybe there was brave people just coming forth, and so there was a
Right.
spotlight on that.
Yeah, there wasn't like support system for people to like, to turn to, and like kind of. I imagine a lot of like children that happened to were like they're really afraid of coming forward, and like even adults were probably sort of like frightened of what it might like do to their lives, or how it'll affect their lives. So they kind of like have that sort of attitude that Sister James has, where they don't want to like hear the ugly truth, even though it's like the absolute truth. So like or like Mrs. Mueller, like who could possibly be just like enabling these acts to happen to her son because like she feels like that her word is like lesser than the word of an adult man, especially being like she's African American too. Is like she kind of feels, I think, that she if she can get her son through school, she's like these are sacrifices that like have to be made.
There's something that I was going to say in regards to that, and I'm blanking out.
I kind of lost I kind of lost track a little bit what the subject was that we're talking about, but
I'm pretty sure we already covered everything.
We definitely did the 30 minutes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I have notes. I guess I could type some of them up, but does anybody else have any like solid notes that you want to upload? Because I think we have to. She said like one person uploads notes and one person uploads the video.
I think it's the secretary's role to upload the notes, and then the recorder uploads the file.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll also share the file in the discussion so you guys can see it.
Okay. Sounds good.
Estrella, do you need any notes from us, or do you have pretty sufficient notes?
I think I have sufficient notes.
Okay.
All right.
Well, it was nice to see you all again.
Yeah,
nice.
Definitely.
Thank you for like getting together. I know it's kind of a like not pulling strings, but like it's difficult to kind of schedule something in when everyone has a lot of stuff going on and whatnot.
Right.
But I'm happy that everyone was able to get together and get this done.
Well, I got kind of lucky at the end of the semester. My job I'm partially laid off, so I'm on unemployment right now, which is actually kind of a really helpful thing because like starting out the semester. Usually I don't like unemployment, but when it's school, it's like, well,
you can focus a little bit more on your studies.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, yeah. At least get a good foot in the door, like at the beginning of the semester, and then.
Right.
But yeah, it was really nice talking to you all again, and
likewise.
I don't know if is there another group meeting like this in the future.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
We only have a couple weeks left, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like 2 weeks left, so.
2 weeks.
Yeah, I imagine in the like regular semester, there's probably more of these, or. But cool. Well,
best of luck to
happy
everyone.
to talk to y'all.
Yeah, good luck spring semester.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Finish
good
strong,
luck.
everyone.
Yeah, for sure. You too.
All right.
Right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.